Hi mga kawawmat! In this video, we will discuss the principal roots of rational and irrational numbers. So, our objectives will be, we will describe the principal roots and tell whether they are rational or irrational. And then next, we will determine between what two consecutive integers an irrational number lies. Okay, so let us define first the rational numbers. So, in squaring a number, if I have 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, 10. Okay. If we will try to get the square of these numbers, pag sinabing square of these numbers, we will have this one. Okay? May makikita kayong square doon sa mga numbers na yan. Now, so we will have, if we have 3 squared, that is 3 times 3. 4 squared is 4 times 4. 5 squared is 5 times 5, and so on. Okay, so if we will be getting the product of these numbers, then that is 9, this is 16, 25, 49, 81, and 100. So, kumuha lang ako ng random numbers ha. Okay, next. Now, what if we will be squaring a negative number? So, let's say for example, kagaya nito, this is positive 3, ini-square ko si 3, squaring of 3. Now, what if we have negative numbers like negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 7, negative 9, and negative 10. So, if we will be getting the square of these numbers, so ibig sabihin, just like what we did here, kagaya ng ginawa natin dito, so kukunin natin ang square niya. So, therefore, we will have negative 3 times negative 3. If you have noticed, bakit dito multiplication symbol ang ginamit ko? Bakit dito parenthesis? Okay. So, pareho lang po yon. So, if you want to use parenthesis, okay lang po. If you want to use this, okay lang din po. Kasi those symbols both represents multiplication. Okay, so when we are squaring a negative number, as you can see, we will have negative 4 times negative 4, negative 5 times negative 5, and so on. Okay, so if we will be getting the product of this number, so kapag in-square natin itong negative number na to, anong makukuha natin? We can get positive 9. Why positive? Because they have the same sign. So when we are multiplying numbers or integers with the same signs, the product is positive. Okay? Same as the others. So we will get 16, 25, 49, 81, and 100. Now, what have you noticed? Anong napansin ninyo? Okay? We got the same product. Okay, parehot nating nakuha itong numbers na to. So, anong ibig sabihin? Anong ibig sabihin nitong mga to? Bakit sila pareho? So, ibig sabihin, if we will try to get the square root of these numbers, therefore, ang answer natin ay pwedeng positive 3 or negative 3. Okay? Therefore, ang sagot natin ay positive 3 or negative 3. So, ulitin ko po, kapag kinuha natin ang square root ng mga numbers na to, like 9, 16, 25, 49, 81, and 100, pag kinuha natin ang square root nila, ibig sabihin, ang pwede nating maging sagot ay positive 3 or negative 3, positive 4 or negative 4, and so on. Bakit? Kasi kagaya nga ng pinakita ko dito, when we are multiplying the negative integer by itself, the result is still positive. Okay? So, ang square root niya, pwedeng positive, pwedeng negative. Okay. And these numbers are what we called, anong tawag natin dito sa 9, 16, 25, 49, 81, 100? Anong tawag natin sa mga yan? Yan ang tinatawag natin na perfect squares. Ano nga ba ang ibig sabihin kapag perfect squares? So, ang perfect square, ito yung product. Ito yung product when we are multiplying equal numbers. So, ano ibig sabihin? Kagaya nito, if I have 9, ito yung product kapag nag-multiply tayo ng equal numbers. Or simply, this is the product when we are multiplying the number by itself. Okay, same as this. So this is the product when we are multiplying the number by itself. So kung ano yung result o product nung dalawang numbers na pinag-multiply mo o minultiply mo by itself sa sarili niya, yung product nun o yung result nun is what we called a perfect square. If I have 2 times 4 equals 8, 8 is not a perfect square. Why? Because 2 times 4, magkaibang number yon. Okay, so therefore, yung result niya na 8, hindi yun perfect square. Okay, so kagaya nito, 9, since nakuha siya dahil 3 times 3 by multiplying by itself, so these are the numbers or examples of a perfect square numbers. And, so kung mapapansin nyo, nung nakuha natin yung square root nila, ang lalabas ay positive 3 or negative 3, right? So that's why it is called rational numbers. Perfect squares or perfect square numbers are considered rational numbers. Why? Because the square root of 9, square root of 16, pag kinuha natin ang mga square root nila, ang lalabas ay rational number. Ano ba ibig sabihin ng rational number? It can be expressed in the form of A over B. So, kapag kinuha nga natin yung square root nito, square root of 9, ang lalabas ay positive 3 and negative 3, pwede mo siya i-express as 3 over 1 or negative 3 over 1. So, rational number ang square root ng perfect squares. Okay, so let's have principal root. So, what do we mean by principal root? This is the positive square root of a number. It can be rational or irrational. So, kanina nga, itong mga perfect square numbers na to, pag kinuha natin ang square root niya, di ba, we can have 3 squared or negative 3 squared, di ba? Kapag in-expand natin ito. So, kapag kinuha natin ang square root ng mga number na to, ang lalabas nga ay pwedeng positive 3 or negative 3. Ulitin ko, when we are getting the square root of these numbers, we can have positive 3 or negative 3. Tas ganun din po sa iba. Now, pag sinabi nating principal root is just referring to the positive square root. So, ito lang po ang principal root. Okay, ulitin ko. When you are asked to give the square root of these numbers, square root po tayo, ang sagot po natin ay positive 3 or negative 3. So, ayan po, positive, negative. Pero kung ang hinahanap lang po ay principal root, that is referring to the positive square root. So, ito lang po siya, yung mga positive. Okay? And these numbers can be rational or irrational. That's why yung mga square root o principal root ng ating perfect square numbers are rational numbers. So kapag ang binigay sa inyo ay perfect square, ang square root po nun ay rational numbers. Okay, let's have an example. Give the principal root of each of the following. So I have square root of 64. Square root of 64 is a perfect square. Okay, so therefore, principal root lang ang hinahanap natin. So that is positive 8. Okay, because 8 times 8, that is 64. So 64 is a perfect square. Okay, so bakit positive lang to? Kasi ang hinihingi lang po ay principal root. Okay, so this is a rational number. Square root of 64 is a rational number kasi yung square root niya is a rational. Okay, next. Square root of 121, this is also a perfect square, so that is 11. 11 times 11, multiplying it by itself, we will result to 121. And then next, square root of 0.04. Paano kapag may decimals tayo? Same procedure. So, 4 is a perfect square, right? So, therefore, the square root of 0.04 is 0.2 because 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, bakit may 0 pa dito? Kasi we need to write this in 2 decimal places kasi ito ay 1 decimal, di ba dalawa to, 0.2 times 0.2, so 2 decimal places siya. So kaya dapat, kaya ito siya, ito yung product niya. Next, 0.49. So what is the square root of 0.49? 49 49 is a perfect square, so therefore the square root of 0.49 is equal to 0.7 because 7 times 7, that is 49. And 0.7 times 0.7, that is 0.49. Okay, now what if you were given a fraction? Okay, so kung titingnan nyo yung given, fraction siya, yes, but if you will look at the numerator and denominator, they are both perfect squares. So 9 is a perfect square, and that is 3 because 3 times 3 is 9. 25 is also a perfect square, and that is 5 because 5 times 5 is 25. So kung ito ay 3 at ito ay 5, therefore, the square root of 9 over 25 is 3 over 5. Next, I have square root of 81 over 169. So, square root of 81. Itong 81 is a perfect square, and that is 9 because 9 times 9 is 81. And then 169, this is also a perfect square. So, this is 13. So, this is 9, this is 13. So, the square root of 81 over 169 is 9 over 13. So, as you can see, all of these are perfect squares. Nung kinuha natin ang square root nila, ang lumabas ay rational numbers. Why? Because, bakit ko nasabing rational numbers yung square root ng ating mga perfect squares? Bakit po? Kasi it can be expressed in the form of A over B. So, ito po ang tatandaan. Kapag ang nakuha natin, ang square root natin ay pwede natin i-express as the ratio or quotient of A over B or two integers, then that is considered rational numbers. That's why, ang mga perfect squares, kapag binigyan kayo ng perfect squares, automatic, the square root is a rational number. Kasi ito, A over B, ito, pwede mo to i-express as a fraction, right? Kung babalikan natin yung conversion ng decimal to fraction because this is an example of terminating decimals. So, kapag terminating decimals, pwede natin yun i-express as A over B. Also, yung integers natin, pwede rin to. Ito yung A, ano ang magiging denominator niyan? 1. So, 8 over 1, 11 over 1. So, this can also be expressed as A over B. So, ulitin ko, kapag binigyan kayo ng perfect square numbers at kinuha natin ang square root nun, automatic the root ay rational numbers. Next, how about irrational numbers? So, how about irrational numbers? So, what are those irrational numbers? So, one example of this is yung mga non-perfect square numbers. So, kagaya kanina, yung mga given natin, all perfect squares yon. That's why those are all considered rational numbers. Okay. So, kapag opposite naman ito, kapag ang number mo ay hindi perfect square, kagaya nito, so 2 is not a perfect square. Also 5, 10, 15, 54, 70. So, these are just examples, ha? So, kapag ang numbers mo ay hindi perfect square, at kinuha natin ang square root nila, ang magiging result niyan ay non-repeating and non-terminating. Ito yung hindi nagre-repeat. It neither repeats nor terminates. Hindi sila repeating, hindi rin sila terminating. Okay. So, ito po ang magiging result niya. So, hindi siya repeating, hindi rin siya terminating. Hindi kagaya nung rational natin kanina dun sa mga perfect square, the result is always an integer or a rational number. Okay? Well, this one, ang result niya, since it cannot be expressed, since hindi natin siya pwedeng magawa na A over B kasi nga non-repeating at non-terminating siya, then these are considered irrational. Tandaan po, kapag ang given natin ay hindi perfect squares, hindi perfect square numbers, then those are considered irrational numbers. Okay? So, ano nga po yung isang square root nito? Meron pa siyang negative. So, kagaya rin po nung kanina, positive-negative rin po tayo. Okay? So, if you will be asked, what is the principal root of square root of 2? So, ang lalabas ito. So, hindi naman natin to pwedeng ibigay. Okay? What is the principal root? So, paano kung ang hinihingi ay yung exact value niya? So, since hindi siya exact value, ano ang gagawin natin? Okay? So, we will be getting the two consecutive integers of each irrational number. So, paano natin kukunin ang principal root of irrational numbers? So, irrational means ito yung mga hindi perfect squares. So, since hindi nga sila perfect, ano ang isasagot natin? So, kukunin natin yung dalawang consecutive integers of each irrational number. So, dapat you have to familiarize yourselves doon sa ating table of square root and perfect square. So, dapat familiarize tayo doon sa mga perfect squares and its square root. Okay, so let's have an example. Between what two consecutive integers the square root of 30 lies? Okay, so paano natin ito gagawin? Okay, so since ang given natin ay square root of 30 and 30 is not a perfect square, that's why it is irrational. Okay, so this is irrational kasi this is not perfect. Ang gagawin natin, kukunin natin yung dalawang consecutive, yung magkasunod na integers na kung saan nasa gitna ang square root of 30. So, since wala tayong square root of 30 dito kasi hindi nga siya perfect square, kukunin natin kung saan siya napapagitna. So, therefore, nasa gitna siya ni square root of 25 and square root of 36. So, ito po ang kukunin nating dalawa kasi square root of 25 and square root of 36. Kukunin natin yung mas mababa sa kanya at yung mas mataas. Okay? So, square root of 30 is greater than square root of 25 but less than square root of 36. So, ulitin ko, kukunin po natin yung dalawang perfect squares na kung saan nasa gitna si square root of 30. Okay, now, nakuha na natin yung dalawa. Anong gagawin? Kukunin natin yung square root nito. So, square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 36 is 6. So, therefore, square root of 30 lies between 5 and 6. So, ganun lang po ang gagawin. Kung saan siya napapagitna, kunin mo yung dalawang perfect squares na mas mababa at mas mataas sa kanya. And then get the square root. Therefore, square root of 30 lies between 5 and 6. So, dapat memorize po natin ang perfect squares and its square root. Next. So, between what two consecutive integers the square root of 163 lies? So, saan naman ito? Ito ang given natin. So, hanapin natin yung dalawang perfect squares na mas mababa at mas mataas naman sa kanya. So, square root of 163, so ito siya. So, square root of 144, ito, and square root of 169. Okay, hindi pwede ito kasi lumampas na siya. Okay, so dapat nasa gitna siya. Square root of 144 and square root of 169. So, as you can see, yung 163 nasa gitna ni 144 at 169. Ganun po palagi ang gagawin. So, square root of 163 is greater than square root of 144 but less than square root of 169. Okay, so nakuha na natin. So, kunin natin ang square root ni 144, that is 12. And then square root of 169, that is 13. So, therefore, square root of 163 lies between 12 and 13. So, ito po ang pwede natin kunin, estimation or approximation kapag ang square root natin ay irrational. Okay? Kapag hindi siya perfect square. So, ito po ang pwede natin kunin as estimation or approximation. Kapag ang square root natin ay irrational. So, hindi perfect square. Let's have another. So, I have here between what two consecutive integers does negative square root of 55 lie? So, ito, ang negative niya ay nasa labas. Okay? So, ang imposible ay yung nandito kapag ang negative mo ay nandito sa loob. So, that is imaginary. So, wala po tayong ganun na yung negative, meron tayong, na yung negative rather, nasa loob ng square root natin. Kasi we do not have square root of negative 55. Okay? Wala po tayong square root of negative 55. Dahil kapag in-square natin ng positive at negative integer, it's always positive. Okay? So, dapat positive lagi. So, kapag may negative tayo dito sa loob, imaginary po yun. Okay? So, since ang negative naman niya ay nandito sa labas, so makukuha pa rin natin siya. Okay? So, ito po siya. Now, so 55, nasa gitna siya ni 49 at 64. Okay. So, now, but take note, meron tayong negative. So, this is a different thing, ha? Hindi siya yung kagaya kanina ng previous slide natin. Bakit? Since negative siya, ibig sabihin mas mataas, mas mababa ang value niya. Mas mababa, mas mataas ang value niya. So, yung 49, instead of writing this here, dito natin siya, ay yung 64, instead of writing square root of 64 here, hindi po siya ang mataas. Siya po ngayon ang mababa. Okay? And then yung square root of 49 natin, negative square root of 49, siya ngayon ang mataas. Bakit? Bakit siya ang mataas? Kasi negative tayo. Okay? So kapag negative ang value natin dito, ang coefficient, ang mas mataas yung number, mas mababa yung value niya. Tapos mas baba yung number, mas mataas ang value kapag negative. Okay? So baliktad tayo ngayon, hindi kagaya kanina. So, baliktad po. So, now, we can now get the two consecutive integers. So, ito na po siya. So, ito po, square root of 64 is 8. Ito po, square root of 64 is 8. But since may negative sa labas, negative 8. And then, square root of 49, that is 7. Since may negative tayo sa labas, that will become negative 7. So, therefore, negative square root of 55 lies between negative 8 and negative 7. Let's have the last example. So, between what two consecutive integers does negative square root of 300 lie? So, kunin naman natin yung 300. Nasa gitna siya ng square root of 289 and square root of 324. So, saan natin ilalagay si 324 at 289? Kasi negative ito, ha? So, saan po? Si 324 dito siya. Siya ngayon ang mababa. And then si 289 siya po doon kasi meron tayong negative. Okay? So, may negative po tayo. Now, so makukuha na natin siya. Square root of 324 is 18. May negative tayo kaya negative 18. And then square root of 289 is 17. May negative tayo kaya negative 17. Okay. Now, kung ang tatanungin ninyo, ma'am, diba ang principal root is always positive? Yes. Kaya nga nung kinuha natin ang principal root nito, 18, naging negative lang siya because of the negative outside. Okay? Pero nung ito, yung nasa loob, it's positive. Okay? Ayan siya, oh. Nag-negative lang siya dahil meron tayong negative outside the radical sign. Okay. So, therefore, negative square root of 300 lies between negative 18 and negative 17. Okay, it's your turn. You may test yourself. You may pause the video para hindi kaagad makita ang sagot. Okay, so tell whether the following is rational or irrational number. If it's rational, give its principal root, yung positive lang. If not, kung irrational naman siya, give its two consecutive integers where the irrational number lies. Okay, so I have here the given. So, square root of 49, is it a perfect square or not? Okay, very good. This is a perfect square. So, this is rational. And that is equal to, what is the principal root? 7. How about 144? This is a perfect square. So, this is also a rational number. And what is the principal root? Ano ang principal root niya? Yung number na kapag minultiply natin by itself, the result will be 144? Yes, that is 12 because 12 times 12, that is 144. Next, square root of 35. So, 35 is not a perfect square. So, therefore, this is irrational. Okay? And since this is irrational, we will be getting two consecutive integers. So, saan napapagitna si square root of 35? Nasa gitna siya ni square root of 25 at ni square root of 36. So, si 25 at 36, 5 and 6. Okay? Next, square root of 81. This is a perfect square. So this is rational. Okay. So what is the principal root? Very good. That is 9. Okay? So, ulitin ko ha, kanina, nung nilabas ko yung given, pwede mo i-pause yung video and then magsagot ka muna and then balikan mo para sa checking. Okay, next. Square root of 120. This is not a perfect square. And this is between, saan siya napapagitna ng dalawang perfect squares? Nasa gitna siya ni square root of 100 and square root of 121. So, this is irrational. So, 100 is 10, 121 is 11. Next, square root of 65 rather. So, this is not a perfect square. This is irrational. And this is between, nasa gitna siya ng, saan siya napapabilang? Sa square root of 64 and square root of 81. So, yung 64 at 81, that is 8 and 9. Okay. Square root of 84. This is also irrational. So, irrational, nasa gitna siya ni square root of 81 and square root of 100. Okay, so that is, square root of 81 is 9. Square root of 100 is 10. So, yan, 9 and 10. Next, 225. This is a perfect square. So, that is rational. And the principal root is 15. Square root of 100. This is also rational. And the principal root is 10. How about square root of 155? Okay, that is irrational. This is not a perfect square. So, therefore, this is between, saan siya gitna? Okay, nasa gitna siya ni, okay, square root of 144 and square root of 169. So, 12 and 13. Okay, so I hope you got perfect. Congratulations! Thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell para updated kayo for more video tutorials. This is your guide in learning your math lessons, your Wow Math channel.